When I was in college, my entire pursuit of happiness centered around one word: me. I thought that if I could find fulfillment on my own, I would be happy. So I tried to fulfill myself in all kinds of different ways. I tried to drink and carouse and party my way to happiness. I tried to fill myself with popularity and shallow relationships. I was a history major, and I had this enlightenment that Christianity wasn't the only religion, so I should investigate others to see if I could find happiness in them. And so I traveled to places like India and West Africa and the Middle East, studying different religions to try to find something that would fill me. Finally, when I came to my senior year in college, I realized nothing was fulfilling my life. I was 21 and had experienced most of the pleasures of life around the world, and yet I still felt empty. Around that time, I met my future wife, Jen, and she opened my eyes to a hard reality that my happiness wasn't all about me. She taught me what it meant to make Jesus the center of my life and not myself. And when I decided to put Jesus at the center, it turned my world upside down. You see, I realized that happiness came not by trying to fill myself, but by giving myself away. You know, throughout the life of the jar, God has given me countless opportunities to give myself away to people by giving my time, my words, my money, and my energy to others. And I've had a front row seat to watch how God is able to use those times to change lives. Throughout this series, we've been asking the question, what makes you happy? And when I think about what makes me happy, it's seeing lives changed when they experience God's love. There is no joy that compares with seeing a changed life. And I'm just overwhelmed to think that God would choose me even though He doesn't need me, to give myself away so that people can come into a relationship with Him. You see, folks, it truly does make me happy to know that Jesus rescued me so that I can rescue others. Jesus gave His life for me so I can do the same for others. I want you to hear from my good friends Bryce and Whitney Kreider. Bryce and Whitney tried for many years to find happiness by filling themselves with work and financial success, but found that true happiness didn't come until they gave themselves away. Let's check out their story.
I am Whitney Kreider. I'm a PA in family practice and spine.
And I'm Bryce Kreider, and I work in medical device sales.
The way that I tried to find happiness before I really got plugged in at church and some of the nonprofit stuff was I was just a workaholic. I worked all the time. I never said no to shifts. I just kept thinking if I worked more or put myself into more projects or made more money, bought more things, that would find happiness. I worked in the ER when I first got out of school, so I would either work day shift or night, and then I would come home, and when Bryce and I were dating, either hang out with the kids for a few hours, go to bed, repeat the same thing the next day, or I was working night shifts, so I would come home, try to go to sleep, and then the kids would be up around 6. I would have gotten home at like 3 a.m. and then they would wake up at 6 a.m. and then I would feel guilty because I wasn't spending time with the kids. Then I would get up and stress out and lay in bed thinking I was resting, and then I'd get up and repeat the same day. And I had a really short temper, and I think at some point Bryce and I had a discussion. He's like, "You're just not that great to be around." And that was hard for me to hear because I was used to having fun with the kids and doing stuff together that we liked. And I think that really hit home for me because I was like, wow, my family doesn't even want to be around me. Like, that's a pretty big deal. So that's when I realized I have to make some changes because I didn't feel like myself either.
I'm very much a box checker. So I have goals and lists and things that I like to accomplish, and checking those boxes makes me feel good. And So I have very clear, defined goals, short-term, long-term, as I was growing up, and as you mature in age and you start to check a lot of those boxes, you realize that all those things that you thought that you needed, and you would be happy once X happened or once Y happened, and after X, Y, and Z happened, and you're still looking, then you realize that your list has been wrong the entire time. My personal goals were, becoming one of the top sales reps in the state, doing things, selling a robotic program that no one else in the state had done. All of those things were really cool for about an hour. And then they just didn't matter anymore because it was on to the next thing, and the pressure didn't go away. And so, for me professionally, I accomplished all of the things I had really wanted to get done. And there still was a void. And I just thought, as a man, your career is very important. And so maybe I just hadn't reached that point in my career to where I felt fulfilled. But really kind of once I got into the place that I'd always thought that would make me happy, but it wasn't filling the void that I assumed that it would. So that was the moment for me that I realized I had to scratch that plan.
I remember there was like a defining moment probably 2 or 3 years ago that I told Bryce, I was like, it's too much. I keep bringing on more stuff, business-wise, personal life, trying to take on more projects. And I just told him, I have to stop. And so at this point, I was working in family practice, and I cut back to 3 days a week, I think. And then I was just really helping with the basket and kind of cut back on some stuff that I had planned on doing. And at first it was almost more stressful because I felt like I was letting people down, and I'm definitely a people pleaser, so I like to say yes, and anytime anyone asked me to do something, I'd be on board. And there was just a lot of things that I had to cut back on, and that was stressful at first, but now it's a lot better because I can actually invest in the stuff that I'm doing.
The person I was closest to in my family, my grandmother passed away. And for our family, she was the anchor. She kept all of us focused on what mattered. And in terms of giving yourself away, she did it better than anyone I've ever seen. And I felt a sense of responsibility to take that mantle from her and make that my new list. And I tried to realign it with the things I had seen from her growing up. And so it just was a major overhaul in the priorities and the legacy that I wanted to leave.
So the community basket is an outreach through the jar that we have hygiene and cleaning products. People can come twice a month and get 5 free items. And so it's just been awesome. I felt like the first couple of times, when you're thinking we're giving out toilet paper, you don't think it's gonna be that fulfilling. You think it's just gonna be kind of help people through the line, do your normal things. And I would come home and tell Bryce, I'm like, I feel like I have on a runner's high. It was just it would fill my cup so much, and so much more than any day that I would spend at work. You're still helping people at work, but it was just so different. Just being able to be that when you're, those people are in a vulnerable situation, having to come get help with things that are, embarrassing, or people come in and we hear all the time that people are like, it just wasn't like a stuffy outreach, you actually felt like you cared, and just being able to smile and give people a hug or see them every couple of weeks, it's just been awesome. The last time we were open on a Thursday, there was a guy that came in, and it was his first time ever coming, and he just kind of lingered in the front room for a while. And so I started talking to him, and he's like, well, where's your church? And what kind of style is it? Do I need to wear a suit? Or just asking me a bunch of questions about church. And then finally he said, if the people at your church are as kind as they are at the basket, then I want to be a part of that. And so we talked about it, and he was Catholic and has always grown up and gone to church, where he said he's always felt judged. He had some addiction problems in the past, and he's like, I just have never felt this level of love and welcoming just walking into an outreach where they're giving away free stuff. So that was pretty cool.
We started down an international adoption route, then we started maybe a local adoption route, and the more we got into it, and the reason we got into it was to make a difference and was to help, or to try to help, even if it was just one kid. We realized that the kids in line for those adoption and going through agencies are going to get adopted, whether it was us or the next person in line. Whereas these kids in foster care, if they get to a certain point, they're just there. And so it was an evolution for us. We started here, and then over about an 18-month span, we ended up taking our first foster class. So a year after that, we had our first placement, twin boys, and then we knew for sure at that point that that was the route we were going to go with our adoption. So.
And I think that was a God thing for both of us too,
There's no
because
doubt.
we both came to that conclusion on our own. Like, we had both been praying, you know, what should we do? Do we adopt a newborn? Kind of what did we want to do with adoption? And both of us, I think at separate times, were like, I've just been praying about it, and I feel like we should go through DCS. And neither of us had ever talked about that. So it was kind of an interesting thing, a God thing for sure. But he knew that that was the plan the whole time. It took us a little longer, both being planners and wanting to control that. We thought that we knew what was best, and we definitely didn't. What happens with adoption, once you're licensed to adopt, they send you emails. So you get a bio about the kiddo, and then you get pictures. So we were taking Bella and Austin to Mexico, and we inquired on these two kiddos, a sibling set. So a little girl, she was 4 at the time, and a little boy who's 3. They're full siblings. So we were pretty excited about it. We read about their situation, and we thought, you know, this could be a good fit. The little girl's the oldest, and Bella is the oldest, so they were same age group or order as our kids. And so they sent us an email back, and they said, well, we can wait and do an interview with you the next week. So we went on our trip. We had our kids make a video that was like, we're so excited to have new siblings, and made a picture book. We had to take that with us just to kind of describe our life. And then we went to like an hour and a half, 2-hour interview with 7 people that work for DCS. So that was kind of how that came to be. We left the interview, they called us, it was about 45 minutes later, and they called and said, hey, we forgot some questions, can you come back? And we're like, sure. So we turn around in the middle of the highway, go back, and they're like, well, our only question is, what are you guys doing tonight? And we're like, well, picking our kids up. And they're like, well, we'd like you to meet Kai and Miles because we chose you guys as a family.
So Kai and Miles are very similar to Bella and Austin, and the girl is the older of the two, so she's the responsible one that's artistic and a little more shy and reserved. And then he is a typical boy. He's loud and he's crazy, and he's funny, and he thinks he's funny, and he's cute, and he's been told he's cute. And so they came with a very similar dynamic to what already existed in our house. So it blended very well. Definitely the last few months, since the beginning of summer, they've really started to come out of their shell, and their caseworker would come once a month, and then another person would come every other week and meet with them, and every time it would kind of set her back a little bit. He was immune to all of it because he has been moving placements since he was born. She remembers the first traumatic move, and every move since she remembers. So for her, when those folks show up, it's not a good checkup. It's filled with anxiety. She will leave the room and go color or play in her room until the visit's over with, just because for her it's all bad. So once we noticed that trend, then we could relate to their caseworker, and their caseworker was able to set her down and say, listen, this is a permanent placement for you, and explain what that meant, and it wasn't a temporary foster home that would lead to another move at some point. So I think for her, once she realized this was home, she's there for a visit to see how she's doing because she misses her. Her walls started to come down pretty quickly.
I think just seeing our kids together and their close bond has been one of the coolest things for us. I mean, our kids were very giving and outgoing and loving towards other people, but to see how they've really taken them in as their siblings. So I think one of the first times they argued, I was like, Bryce, they're arguing. Like, they're finally siblings. They're not just like roommates. So that was a cool time. And then a couple months ago, I looked at Bryce and I'm like, can you believe like these are our kids permanently? It was just a cool, kind of just one of those moments where you're laying on the couch and snuggling and, you know, it just feels normal and it feels right. Like, we knew that once they had been there a few months, those were supposed to be our kids, and all the weird transitions we went through to get there were all worth it because God knew that Kai and Miles were supposed to be with us forever.
We talk about bless the world as a hashtag. We use it all the time in our house, in every prayer, every night, in every bedroom in our house. And so the two older kids now have seen what bless the world looks like in real form. It's not something that we prayed about or we wrote a check for. We converted a bedroom and we opened up an extra one to bless the world for two people that we could have gone about our life without ever meeting or knowing, and we would have been just fine, but we're better because of it. So they're going to be better because of it. Their plans when we talk to our 11-year-old daughter include adoption at some point. So we're changing their direction, and then all of the lives they're going to get to bless along the way because we changed our priority list.
Yeah, I think before it was finding temporary happiness in different things, whereas now it's just a feeling of contentment. Like, I'm following what God's plan was, which I know is so much bigger. So even in the moments where like, ooh, this is stressful, or 4 kids, wow, this is a busy house, or you know, something like that, it doesn't feel intimidating anymore. It just feels like this is what we're supposed to be doing.
And I think from two control freaks, learning to let go a little bit and let someone else write our checklist for us has been the biggest change for me personally. Is instead of me writing this list of things I need to get done to be happy, I just trust that at some point it will be fairly obvious what that next thing is for me to do. And then knowing that I have the resources to be able to go and do that because we've shifted what was important. You know, we weren't getting the next bigger, nicer, or newer thing. And now we have resources that when that new bless the world checklist comes out, we're ready to go. What makes me happy is being more present now. And I realize when I'm being more present in a scenario is that I'm not distracted and I'm not thinking about all of the things I need to get done. I'm just present and I can watch my kids play. I can spend time with the family, and I'm actually spending time.
I think what makes me happy, and I don't even really use the word happy anymore, I guess it's just more content, is seeing our kids together. Just like Bryce said, having a more peaceful life. I'm not stressed out like I was to, you know, check off all of these achievements that I thought I had to have by a certain point, or be a people pleaser where I had to say yes to everything. I just feel content in what we're doing in the moment, and you know, whatever comes along, I'll invest in the things that God has decided are important.